Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Piris meets Indian External Affairs Minister, discusses matters pertaining to energy and fishing communities. Petroleum Corporation to bear losses of the LIOC. CPC is in a fix, says Energy Minister. Sri Lanka auctions off over 100 vessels seized from Indian fishermen. Minister Basil Rajapaksa should not hold positions in Sri Lanka after pledging allegiance to the USA. Writ petition filed by Venerable Ulapane Sumangalathera to be taken up on the 16th of March. Attorney at law Hejaz Hizbullah granted bail after 18 months. Tunisia's democracy verges on collapse as president moves to take control.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
In our top story for tonight, reports suggest that articles have been included in the surcharge tax bill, which will also include the Employees Provident Fund and the Retirement Gratuity Fund. The relevant bill on the surcharge tax was published via Gazette today.
According to the bill, the surcharge tax will be levied from any individual, partnership or company whose taxable income calculated in accordance with the provisions of the Inland Revenue Act number 24 of 2017 exceeds 2 billion rupees for the year of assessment commencing on 1st of April 2020 at the rate of 25%. According to the definition of the Inland Revenue Act, a company is included in the definition of a provident fund, a pension gratuity fund or a similar fund. Parliamentarian Dr. Harsha De Silva stated that this bill will pave the way for 25% surcharge tax to be levied on multiple funds, including the EPF.
Ada mudal amatyanse gazette එකක් ගහලා තියෙනවා super gains tax එකේ විධිවිධාන. ඒකේ කියනවා
The Ministry of Finance has issued a gazette today elaborating parameters of the super gains tax. It states if any company earns profits in excess of 2 billion rupees, a 25% of it must be paid to the government. For the first time in history, the EPF has also been included in the list of companies. According to the Companies Act, provident funds are also included. This is such a shameful act by the government. They are targeting the profits enjoyed by a fund that is supported by the working class, imposing a whopping 25% tax. EPF is the largest fund in Sri Lanka with a value worth over 3 trillion. In 2020, its profits was around 250 billion rupees. Around 65 billion rupees will be charged as tax. Last week, they commenced the 100,000 projects initiative to distribute money to local authorities to commence work in preparation for the elections. That is probably how they plan to finance that initiative, through taxing the fund. This is indeed an immoral act. No government has done such a thing to the working class.
In some rather somber news, 3 people died and 1 person was hospitalized after an earth embankment collapsed in Madavala Wattegama today.
Police said that 4 people were involved in building a wall, and during the construction process, a mound of earth collapsed on top of them. The incident took place close to 2 p.m.
Two people were digging at the back. The earth embankment collapsed onto them. Two people were covered partially. One spoke, the other did not speak. His body was bent under the debris. He was sent to the hospital in that position. The other 2 were completely covered by earth.
After rescuing the victims, they were admitted to the Katugasthoda Regional Hospital. 3 out of 4 victims in critical condition had died due to their injuries. The survivor was transferred to the Kandy General Hospital. According to our correspondent, the injured person is currently receiving treatment at the ICU of the Kandy General Hospital. According to the police, the deceased were residents of Poojapitia, Madol Kale and Katamula.
Indian Minister of External Affairs Dr. S. Jaishankar in a tweet said that he discussed the steps that must be taken to enhance Sri Lanka's energy security with Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Peiris. The two foreign ministers met today in New Delhi to hold bilateral talks.
The two dignitaries had discussed a wide range of issues pertaining to the bilateral relationship during the talks. In a tweet, Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said that he held productive talks with Sri Lankan Foreign Minister G.L. Peiris and that the discussion focused on economic and investment initiatives that will strengthen Sri Lanka at this time. Dr. S. Jaishankar also said that views were exchanged regarding the fishermen issue between the two countries and agreed that bilateral mechanisms should meet early. The Indian Foreign Minister also said they recognized the importance of greater tourism for economic recovery during the discussion as well. Sri Lanka's High Commissioner to India, Milinda Moragoda, Indian Foreign Secretary Sri Harshvardhan Shringla, and senior diplomats from both countries attended the discussion as well. Sri Lanka is set to receive a currency swap of $400 million to Sri Lanka, while India has also deferred a payment of $500 million due to be paid by Sri Lanka to the Asian Clearing Union by 2 months. India has also agreed to provide a $500 million line of credit to Sri Lanka as well.
Staying on the same subject, speaking to The Hindu, Foreign Minister G.L. Peiris has said India's economic support made a world of difference. He also mentioned that Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa will make a second visit to India soon after the 16th of this month to consolidate these agreements. Commenting on the agreement on the Trincomalee oil tank farm, the Foreign Minister said, and I quote, "There is a realization on both sides that it is a great pity to leave this potentially useful facility neglected for something like 17 years because that storage capacity would have been very useful for Sri Lanka as well," unquote. Speaking further, he said the only thing that remains to be done is the signing of the lease. When questioned about the Chinese interference, Professor Peiris said Sri Lanka has repeatedly assured that under no circumstances would they allow any part of the country's territorial waters or aspirant to be utilized in any manner that is detrimental to India or to any other friends.
At a time, Sri Lanka's foreign minister is in India discussing matters pertaining to our country's energy sector with his Indian counterpart. Lanka IOC announced price hikes for diesel and petrol effective from midnight last night. LIOC increased its selling prices for auto diesel by 3 rupees per litre and 92-octane petrol by 7 rupees per litre. Accordingly, the new price of a litre of 92-octane petrol is now set at 184 rupees. While auto diesel is priced at 124 rupees. Issuing a statement, LIOC said that the price hike was made due to the rise in fuel prices in the global market. LIOC further stated, even though the prices have increased, it is still suffering a loss of 42 rupees from a litre of petrol and 10 rupees from a litre of diesel. The LIOC has also stated that it is liable for 10,500 local shareholders as it is an entity listed on the Sri Lankan Stock Exchange and has also requested the Ministries of Finance and Energy to provide relief for their company to cover these losses.
Does the LIOC bear authority to hike prices as they please? Throughout history, Lanka IOC has been a company that has amended the prices of fuel based on their interest. By increasing the prices, they have lost their customers to the Petroleum Corporation. They have continuously said that they are incurring a loss of 6 rupees from a litre of petrol and 35 rupees from a litre of diesel. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation had to bear its losses. Will the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation also announce a price hike? They are not of the stance that prices should be increased. We must accept that as the prices of crude oil increased, this is the highest ever price that was recorded in 8 years. On one hand, the fuel prices were low when the price of crude oil increased. Because of all of this, we are in a desperate situation. We will try our best to avoid burdening the general public. We responsibly state that they are trying to increase prices. IOC purchases fuel for a price lower than the price purchased by the CPC. They don't purchase on credit. They buy through bidding. Their administration cost is lower than that of the Petroleum Corporation. Neither the government nor the Indian company was able to reduce the price for 17 months. When the global prices increased in December, the benefit was obtained by the LIOC. They did not implement laws back then. Today, the LIOC has become the major entity in the country that controls fuel prices. Even when prices reduced by 10 to 15%, they only bought stocks sufficient for several days. If we had to wait days for stocks of fuel to be released then, prices will definitely increase now. What will happen to the supply of power?
While the subject minister claims that the losses incurred as a result of IOC increasing fuel prices will be on the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, there seems to be no solution to the requirement of fuel for electricity generation. Though the Public Utilities Commission said this afternoon that there are no requests for scheduled power cuts for the day, the CEB says they would have to cut power if there is a malfunction at a thermal power plant due to the lack of fuel or some other reason.
No notification or request has been made yet by the Ceylon Electricity Board for a power cut today. We have enough capacity today. There is a good chance that there will be no cuts if we receive the fuel soon.
The Minister of Energy states that oil has been supplied to the CEB beyond the period agreed upon.
The Petroleum Corporation has no obligation to provide diesel. They informed the country and the President that they procure oil directly from India from the IOC. They asked for a week. We provided the fuel for 10 days instead of a week. Even though we have no obligation to ensure a continuous supply of electricity, taking into consideration matters like the advance levels, while we provide fuel to the factories, we provide it to the CEB as well as much as we can. I do not know the discussions that the CEB has with the IOC, and we have no objection to it. It is a respite to us if someone is providing fuel to the CEB.
However, discussions on obtaining oil directly from the Indian oil company to the CEB are not finalized.
The government says there will be rain in April and the reservoirs will be filled. Then they purchase 300 megawatts from the private sector for 3 years. We have a dearth of about 500 megawatts, but if we are purchasing that from external sources, that is a serious situation. These agreements are not favorable to the country. The power plant owners and the government do not sign agreements that are beneficial for the country. They are signed under various conditions, but the private sector power plants receive oil from at least the IOC. But the government has to run on a top-up system.
While the bilateral talks between Indian and Sri Lankan foreign ministers on energy security are ongoing, issues surrounding the fishing communities of the two countries have taken a new turn. 21 Indian fishermen who were arrested by Sri Lankan Navy while they were fishing illegally in Lankan territorial waters few days ago were further remanded until the 21st of this month. When the 21 Indian fishermen were produced before the Point Pedro Magistrates Court today, Fisheries Department officials said that statements should be obtained from them. One of the fishermen did not attend court proceedings as he tested positive for COVID-19. Granting permission to the request, the court ordered for 100 kilos of fish stocks found from the seized boats to be sold and for the income earned through it to be presented to courts. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka has auctioned off over 100 Indian fishing boats that were seized by the Sri Lankan Navy over the years for illegally entering the sea of Sri Lanka.
These boats were auctioned for prices ranging from 10,000 to 1.3 million rupees. 135 boats were auctioned today. We will continue to cooperate with India, but we will not allow Indian fishermen into our seas.
A large number of Sri Lankan fishermen from Jaffna, Mullaitivu, Mannar, Putlam and Negombo had registered themselves to place bids at the auction to buy these boats.
The Court of Appeal granted leave today to hear a writ petition filed by Venerable Ulapane Sumangala Thera and 2 others. The petition was filed seeking an order to nullify the appointment of Basil Rajapaksa as the Finance Minister and as a Member of Parliament. Accordingly, the petition will be taken up in court on the 16th of March.
The petitioners pointed out that Basil Rajapaksa shouldn't be allowed to hold the position of finance minister or to act as a member of the Parliament of Sri Lanka, as he has already pledged allegiance to the USA by becoming a citizen. Minister Basil Rajapaksa, Secretary General of Parliament, and the Attorney General were named as respondents to the petition.
It is clear that this country is facing a severe economic crisis. We think that the main reason for this is the absence of law in the country. A man who cannot hold the position of finance minister is appointed to that position, and now he is dragging this country into a crisis. They don't have a proper program to handle this crisis. Last night we saw the prices of fuel being increased again. But the day before, they spent nearly 1 billion rupees for the vehicles that went on the parade. While they are enjoying those parades, innocent citizens are made to pay for them. These are the consequences we all have to face when we appoint unsuitable people to influential positions. As Sri Lankans, we like to see this country being ruled by our own citizens, not by foreigners. Meanwhile, speaking at a press briefing today, Samagi Jana Balawege MP Dr. Harsha De Silva spoke about the importance of an open debate regarding the prevailing economic situation in the country.
Gotabaya Rajapaksa as a candidate ran for president saying, give me the presidency, I will change this country. He got his mandate. Then he increased the power that he had with the 20th Amendment. He got 2/3 majority in parliament. He even changed the constitution in such a way that his brother, an American citizen, could come here and become the Minister of Finance. So much was expected of him. So much was promised by him. But what has happened? Everything has fallen to the depths that we are in today, right? The economy is in shambles. People are unable to survive. So where is the problem? The president is saying the problem is temporary. Uday Gammampila, on the other hand, is saying don't lie to the people. He is saying the problem has nothing to do with the pandemic. So there is no agreement even within the government as to what the problem is. They don't know the contours of the problem. So if you don't know the contours of the problem, the solutions being proposed by various people are certainly not well thought out. So therefore, time has come, I think, for the government, the opposition, independent economists, perhaps to sit together and actually agree on what the problem is, so that at least then proposals can be made to come out of this problem. The problem that we are facing now is the worst one in the last 74 years. People are screaming, they're crying. They're saying, please help us. We can no longer continue to survive. It is that bad. Right? So I urge the finance minister, if he's willing to, and he should be willing to sit with us and agree on the contours of the problem, so that at least there is agreement that we are all on the same page as to what needs to be done.
The Samagi Jana Balawege General Secretary made the following revelation today.
The government is giving tax concessions to their close friends. The government said no to 600 billion rupees in taxable income. We got to know that a close associate of the governing party is going to courts for arbitration. They're going to pay millions of dollars to another close friend. We will reveal the truth about these matters in the near future. Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa says that he is even ready to whitewash black money. To whom does this black money belong to?
Independent think tank Verite Research points out that the recently announced relief package will worsen Sri Lanka's fiscal position. The relief package, that is estimated to cost 229 billion rupees, is approximately more than 10% of government revenue. In its latest analysis, Verite Research says, based on the government's budgeted figures for 2022, the budget deficit will increase to 9.7% of GDP from the initial estimate of 8.5% of GDP if this relief package is included.
The Committee on Parliamentary Affairs decided today to convene Parliament from tomorrow until Friday.
Regulations under the National Drug Regulatory Authority Act, 2 amendments to the Mahapula Scholarship Fund and condolence motions are due to be discussed in Parliament this week. In addition, several amended bills, including the Code of Criminal Procedure, Judicial Organizations and the Code of Civil Procedure, are to be debated and passed in Parliament. Meanwhile, a group of ruling party MPs convened at the Temple Trees today to discuss matters pertaining to the impending parliamentary session. Prime Minister Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa had also attended the meeting chaired by the President. Attention has also been drawn during the discussion on the need to shift to renewable energy and the current power crisis in the country. The Prime Minister's office stated that the Finance Minister had made a special presentation on the development of the export economy.
There are two stances. The Energy Minister and the Minister of Power are of two stances. We reiterated that ministers must make statements abiding by collective responsibility without being a laughingstock in the public's eye. The President informed to continuously supply electricity without any disruption. President and the Prime Minister informed the group to work together with one view in mind, avoiding conflicts.
Attorney at Law Hejaz Hizbullah was granted bail today after 18 long months. More details on this story will follow after the short commercial break.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Tech Bus. The first phase of the Tech Bus initiative, successfully held at St. Andrews College in Puttalam.
ස්ලිට් ආයතනයත් එක්ක බොහොම සාර්ථක වැඩසටහනක් කරා. සමාජ මාධ්‍ය ජාල ගොඩක් පාවිච්චි කරනවා. කොහොමද ආරක්ෂිතව අපේ වැඩ කරගන්නේ කියලා ලොකු දැනුමක් හම්බුණා. අපේ අයට ලොකු දැනුමක් ලැබුණා කියලා මම හිතනවා. ඇත්තටම බෙහෙවින්ම ස්තුතියි.
මේ මෙහෙවර සාර්ථක වේවා කියලා ඊට සිතින් ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරනවා.
Tech Bus.
Organized by Slit Institute.
Tech Bus.
Main sponsor.
Slit Knowledge University, challenging convention and redefining education.
Welcome back to the news. Court of Appeal today ordered to grant bail to attorney at law Hejaz Hizbullah, who was arrested and remanded under the provision of the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
The order for bail was made when the revision application for bail on behalf of attorney at law Hejaz Hizbullah was taken up at the Court of Appeal in the presence of Justices Menaka Vijay Sundara and Neil Iddavala. Attorney at law Hejaz Hizbullah was arrested on the 14th of April 2020 with regard to a sermon that was delivered for students at a madrasa school in Puttalam.
He was granted bail today. He spent approximately 20 months in imprisonment. The lawsuit has commenced. The witness was called.
After 18 months in detention, attorney at law Hejaz Hizbullah was prosecuted under the PTA by the Attorney General at the Puttalam High Court. However, two requests for bail from the High Court were rejected previously. Thereafter, an application for bail was filed with the Court of Appeal. President's counsel Romesh De Silva, lawyers Shanaka Kure and Niran Ankitel appeared for Hejaz Hizbullah on the instructions of attorney at law Sanath Vijayvardhana.
Civil society activists in a joint statement said the proposed amendments to the Prevention of Terrorism Act do not address any of the shortcomings that enabled grave human rights violations. A group of 70 civil activists and 32 civil organizations endorsed this statement on the proposed amendment to the Prevention of Terrorism Act. The statement points out that the PTA has been historically used against minorities and dissenters. The group of civil activists and civil organizations reiterated their call for the complete repeal of the PTA and in the interim an immediate moratorium on the use of that piece of law. The statement also calls for the release of all persons except those who would not qualify for bail under the Bail Act. The statement points out that the proposed amendments do not adhere to human rights standards enshrined in international covenants like the ICCPR, which the government of Sri Lanka ratified and has an obligation to respect and protect.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the proposed bill to amend the present Prevention of Terrorism Act would be a salutary piece of legislation that would amend the present Prevention of Terrorism Act after almost 43 years since it was enacted. The ministry says the proposed amendment, after much deliberation, is a progressive step in advancing, securing and protecting the rights of persons subject to investigation and judicial review under the said law, and is an important move towards the realization of enforcing international best practices to address counter-terrorism legislation.
German ambassador to Sri Lanka, Holger Subert, has said that critical engagement on Prevention of Terrorism Act reforms and other human rights issues from civil society should be welcomed and not met with hostility. In a tweet, the German ambassador said he welcomed the recent releases on bail of those detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. The ambassador wrote on Twitter, quote, "Leave critics in peace, please," unquote.
An island-wide strike action was launched today by nurses, health professionals and public health inspectors. The health professionals demanded solutions for several concerns, including the implementation of proper measures when granting promotions and salary anomalies.
Procedures including issuing medicine at the government hospitals, laboratory tests, X-rays, caretaking of patients in hospital wards and many other activities were halted due to the strike launched by 7 trade unions at 7 a.m. today.
Look at my hand. I'm working at a construction site. This hand got cut, and when I came to the hospital, the staff were on strike. We were not informed that the staff was on strike today.
The three-wheeler cost me 4,000 rupees to get here. Prices have increased because of the fuel price hike. After paying all that money, I have to go home without receiving the medicine. We don't have money to purchase medicine from pharmacies. Director General of the Kandy General Hospital, Dr. Aruna Jayasekara, said approximately 25% of nurses have not reported to duty today. 90% of nurses attached to the Peradeniya Teaching Hospital had not reported to duty today. Patients visiting the Polonnaruwa National Hospital from a number of areas including Dimbulagala and Arangavila had to return to their homes without receiving treatment due to the continuous strike action launched by the nursing staff today. This was the situation at the Mathura General Hospital earlier today.
There are no rulers in this country. No one is providing solutions to a single issue.
The strike also halted procedures at the eye hospital.
There is nothing left to do. A date was given for the 25th. We have to dance according to their tune.
Our correspondent reported that a limited number of clinics at the National Hospital continued to function despite the strike.
Some of the people here are starving because they were told to fast before obtaining reports. The government should be more responsible.
Patients had taken steps to obtain medicine from the State Pharmaceutical Corporation as the Colombo National Hospital was not issuing medicine due to the strike action launched today.
Some medicine is not available today. We have to pay money and purchase them. A number of Director Generals and Secretaries to the Ministry of Health sat down with us for discussions a couple of days ago. During the discussion, they admitted what was happening was wrong. They admitted that they should have implemented the measures much sooner. They were all positive responses. They say all these positive things during discussions, but they do not take measures to untangle this mess. This is a serious problem. The Minister of Health is avoiding the problem. The government is avoiding the problem as well. If their stance is to avoid the problem, then our stance is to carry out a continuous strike action until they give us a solution for this problem. We will find a solution to this problem.
Meanwhile, a group of Pirivan teachers staged a protest opposite the Ministry of Education today. They say Pirivan teachers have lost 1/3 of the pay raise which is entitled to government teachers. They also protested against not being granted leave that the government teachers are entitled to. Due to the protest, traffic congestion was seen along the main road opposite the Ministry of Education. Shortly, a group including the president of the Lanka Pirivan Teachers Service Association visited the Ministry of Education for a discussion.
Finally, the minister discussed the matter, and as per the instruction of the president, an agreement was made to grant the leave which was cancelled and the leave given to the government school teachers.
An officer who then arrived at the scene handed over the letter to the teachers' unions. The crowd dispersed soon after.
Meanwhile, the Joint Trade Union Alliance of Management Services Officers staged a protest in Kandy today, demanding wage increasements and the immediate cessation of the transfer of duties of the management service to other services. Management service officers representing Marthale, Kandy and Norelia districts gathered opposite the Kandy Clock Tower. The protest resulted in a traffic jam that lasted around an hour in Kandy town.
We are not going to halt this here. We are continuing these demonstrations across the island until our demands are met. 12 trade unions are ready to carry out massive protests if the government does not hear our woes.
A protest organized by the Kalani University Students' Union was held today. The protest commenced from the Kiribatgura junction. The protest was based on several demands, including the reopening of universities and an increase in the Mahapala Scholarship Fund. This is how the students entered the Kalani University Administration building, where the protest reached its climax.
We call on the government to immediately address the issues of education and welfare in all universities, to increase the Mahapala premium to 10,000 rupees, provide the Mahapala Scholarship Fund and immediately stop the tyranny surrounding the Kalani University rents program.
The human-elephant conflict continues to aggravate further as a result of the long-standing failure to address the issue. On our People's Files segment tonight, we focus on the failure to demarcate a reserve for wild elephants in Valsapugala.
News First, People's Files.
Sri Lanka holds the grim record of the highest deaths of elephants worldwide annually due to the human-elephant conflict. The conflict induced by man has also resulted in Sri Lanka recording the second highest deaths of people in a year. These harrowing details were revealed during a sitting of the Parliamentary Committee on Public Accounts last year. It was revealed that 407 elephants had died in 2020, while 120 people had lost their lives. All governments in Sri Lanka have come to power promising to provide a permanent solution to the issue. However, certain decisions made by governments have not been implemented despite receiving cabinet approval. The government published a gazette in April last year allocating 23,746 acres of land in Hambantota for a wild elephant reserve. The gazette was published as a result of continuous protests staged by farmers. However, the land area is yet to be demarcated, forcing farmers to stage protests once again. The protest, relaunched by farmers in December by several farmers' associations, is in its 48th day today. Why are gazettes that would benefit both humans and elephants not being implemented? Is this a result of allowing powerful figures with political connections to gain control of valuable lands? The truth cannot be concealed forever.
Tunisia's democracy verges on collapse.
Taking a look at news from overseas, a Quad meeting is set to take place this week. According to foreign media, the meeting will take place during US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's visit to Australia, Fiji and Hawaii.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken will visit Australia, Fiji and Hawaii for meetings with key allies and to reaffirm a commitment to push back against China's growing economic and military coercion. Highlights of the week will be a meeting between Quad members. The US, Japan, India and Australia form a group called Quad that aims to counter China's power in the Indo-Pacific region, which includes Sri Lanka. Important issues like diplomatic efforts regarding North Korea and discussions over Pacific Islands, where China wants to establish bases, are likely to be figured in the meeting. Blinken's trip comes days after China and Russia declared a no-limit strategic partnership at the opening of the Beijing Winter Olympics. The United States is engaged in a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics. Over 140 nations worldwide has signed up for China's Belt and Road Initiative, which promotes Chinese trade and investment and allows Beijing to access new markets. Argentina is the latest addition to the list of BRI partners. The government confirmed that the country has signed up to China's sweeping Belt and Road Initiative, paving the way for investments worth more than $23 billion. The deal was finalized during a bilateral meeting with President Alberto Fernandez and Chinese President Xi Jinping as part of the Argentine leader's three-day visit to Beijing. A memorandum of understanding committing both nations to the deal has already been signed. According to China's Commerce Ministry, Chinese firms have to date invested more than $20 billion via the initiative.
Taking a look back at some local news, APAD Sri Lanka conducted an awareness program for over 200 MSMEs in the tourism sector in Galle today.
The program, empowering small and medium-scale entrepreneurs, organized by the Asia-Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management, was held in Galle. The program focused on identifying and solving the issues faced by small and medium-scale businesses. A product exhibition of small and medium-scale entrepreneurs was also held at the event. This program was done in partnership with Sri Lanka Tourist Board, Ruhunu Tourist Board and UNDP, led by the Asia-Pacific Alliance for Disaster Management.
Tunisian President Kais Saied has dissolved a judicial council that deals with the independence of judges. Tunisian police have locked the doors of the Supreme Judicial Council today, preventing the staff from entering the premises.
Saied, who had dismissed the government and suspended parliament last July, accused council members of taking billions in bribes and delaying politically sensitive investigations. Said's announcement has raised fears for the rule of law in Tunisia after his seizure of almost total power last summer in a move his critics call a coup, with judges' associations accusing him of an illegal act that undermines judicial independence. Yusuf Bouzakar, the head of the Supreme Judicial Council, said Said's declaration represented an attempt to bring judges under presidential instruction. Recently, political parties and civil society groups rejected Said's monopoly of power, demanding the right to decide their country's future amid a worsening socio-economic situation. Political analysts said, quote-unquote, the political elite is trying to state its presence in the public sphere in an act of resistance against the president's intent to monopolize the political process. The country requires an international rescue package to avert a disastrous collapse in public finances, with some state salaries delayed in January.
Let's now take a look at the global COVID-19 roundup.
A Chinese city of 3.5 million near the border with Vietnam was on lockdown today after more than 70 coronavirus cases were discovered there over the past 3 days. Local officials in the city of Bais in the southern Guangxi region announced yesterday that no one would be allowed to leave the city, while residents of some districts would be confined to their homes. Meanwhile, Dr. Michael Osterholm, director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy in Minnesota, says that China China's strict zero-COVID approach won't be able to limit the spread of the highly infectious Omicron variant. Australia has announced the reopening of its borders to vaccinated tourists and other visa holders for the first time in almost 2 years. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said, quote-unquote, "If you are double vaccinated, we look forward to welcoming you back." The reopening on the 21st of February will be welcome news for many sectors, including international education. The mayor of Canada's capital, Ottawa, has declared a state
Ratnayaka alongside our sign language interpreter for tonight, Taraka Gabriel. Do take care and good night.